Hi everyone, I'm Miss Shannon Paul. I'm a comedian, speaker, voice actor, and solopreneur, and the name of my company is Comedy Through the Chaos. You know, it's a variety of things, and I call it social instigation. So if you have an event or there's something where you're like, we need somebody that can bring that energy to a room or an event, I'm that person for you. We add in one component and now we consider it diverse. Oh, it's so interesting. Like, I started as a stand up comedian about 20 years ago now, so a while ago. And a lot of what I did then was working in clubs and going around and doing that. It was because a lot of stand up, it's by its nature, it's punchlines per minute and punchlines per hour, and how many jokes can you get in. And with Comedy Through the Chaos, I wanted to be able to also use it to go, hey, there are a lot of crappy things that are happening, and a lot of us are going through things. So we had a number of friends of mine in the comedy community, and we lost them to mental health challenges and those things. And so being able to have a platform where you acknowledge that just because you're funny doesn't mean you're always happy. And that was one of the turning points for me to be able to go, you can do more with this. You can use it to talk about, somebody can, one of my comedian friends, and a lot of what we do in Comedy Through the Chaos is I talk about some additional challenges that I have with my son because of he's high support on the autism spectrum. We have different adventures than some neurotypical families. We're very honest about those things. He's always the champion, and I do that because there are other families that they're like, oh, I'm doing the same thing. My life is like that. I'm not, I'm not crazy. The world is complex. Or being able to have somebody talk about their addiction and recovery story, having somebody talk about their financial problems. And we can use comedy as a way to build commonalities and showcase those things. And that's what a lot of what I do with Comedy Through the Chaos, is be able to do that.
I am Nancy Corsa, and my company is Black Business Enterprises. I grew up in Italy. I was born in Naples, south of Italy, but I was there till 2. And then we moved to Montichiari, which is a tiny, tiny sleeping town in the suburbs of Milan. And my family and I were the only Black family for the first, I want to say, 11 years. And it was so rough because we were the only different family there. And I didn't realize that I was different until I was told. So I think that built really tough skin. I had some not so pleasant experiences, but that's what kind of helped shape and mold me. And I think the biggest experience for me was when my mom couldn't just get a job. And she was extremely skilled, but because she was Black, they wouldn't hire her. So I decided, well, business, and this is from a young age, I decided then that business would be my thing. Because if no one will hire me or my mom, I will always have something that I built and I created and that no one can take away from me. So I started a very innocent Facebook group and then it just blew up and turned into, hundreds of thousands of people across the nation, and now 3.6 million people altogether in a network in 50 states and 32 countries. Most companies like to help businesses when they already have money. They already have something, they're mid-size. I like to help people at their infancy. I want a newborn business. I want to help you get your feet wet and also help you understand your talent. I don't really wait for people to come to me and say, I need to start a business. I go to them and say, you need to start a business. We have a podcast specifically dedicated to Black-owned businesses. So we help promote them, and we simply want to be a platform where we can amplify their voices. And this is a non-stop thing. We also have a magazine, and it's called the Black Business Magazine, and it goes to over 2,400 homes. We bought mail routes, so it goes all over St. Paul, and we want to do more of that. We want to spread it in every state if we can, and then we have the Black Business Ball, which honors them. We have them vote for each other, and we can give them grants. We want to do as much as possible to just give them a platform. We gave a business owner in 2019 $600 grant. She turned it into a $900,000 company. That's what happens. Now she is off of food stamps. She's off of any type of housing assistance. That's what happens. Her children are now going to college and fully paid for. It eliminates poverty, it lowers crime, it makes the community better as a whole. What happens is a better life for all. So it's very important to not just, and we're not talking about giving a handout, we're talking about giving people something to believe in. So being an entrepreneur means agonizing a bit on every aspect on what you should do, but also it's about finding your strength and your power. Because once you find that, you can never go back. You know, how can you go from running a business to going back to working for someone full time and not run your business? It's impossible.
So I'm Amanda Brinkman, and I am a producer, a filmmaker, and a speaker. I think I was still a normal kid, but I think I just always saw the world in a little bit more holistic way, which I think is, I feel very lucky to have kind of grown up with that perspective. I started my career on the ad agency side. So I started at Conan Wolf in London, and then I came back home to Minneapolis, which is where I'm from, born and raised. And I worked at what's now called McCann Minneapolis. It was Campbell Methune at the time, for a few years. And then I was recruited to Fallon to work on the BMW films, which was a real honor early in my career to work on such a pillar of the branded entertainment community. And in hindsight, really informed what I felt was possible for brands to do in the entertainment space moving forward. And then I was recruited to Deluxe, and I've been there for the last 8 years. And the challenge there was really to turn around a 100-year-old brand that was known for a legacy product in decline. To me, you know, I am a really big believer that brands can do well by doing good. And so doing well in this lens for Deluxe would be raising our brand awareness with small businesses. But what could we do that would be good for small businesses? Instead of doing an ad campaign about, I used to be a check printer, now we do websites, could we instead create a movement to get more people to support small businesses? So in the first year of the Small Business Revolution, we went across the country and we told the stories of 100 small businesses. And we told those stories in a beautiful cinematic documentary style. And the way in which we captured those stories was part of the message. We really wanted to show small businesses as the heroes we believe that they are in our country and to our economy and in our communities. And so we rolled out those 100 stories throughout our 100th year. And so that was kind of our answer to the brand awareness piece, but also how do we reach more small businesses? I just felt we could reach that many more people if we created something really authentic and really genuine. I mean, these were 100 stories about these small businesses. It wasn't about Deluxe. And so in that first year, we ended up reaching not just more people, we ended up reaching 12 times more people than we would have reached if we would have just bought paid advertising. And so we were able to prove that when you do something that is really authentic and genuine and mission and movement first, that people organically share it and new stories are written about it and people can sense that authenticity. So we knew we were onto something, so we wanted to keep going with the storytelling, but we wanted to take it a step further because one of the things that we noticed when we were going across the country telling these 100 stories is that nowhere are small businesses more under siege and struggling than in our small towns. The things that they were struggling with, how findable they are online, their branding, their marketing, those are things we do as a company. So could we continue to tell these beautiful stories, but also show what a difference it makes when you invest in a small business and you get their marketing in great shape and you help with the finances and the operations. So that's when the Small Business Revolution Main Street was born, which is an unscripted reality show where each season we revitalize a different community's main street. We wanted to really focus on 6 different neighborhoods that are so important to the Twin Cities. And we featured all Black-owned businesses.
And no one was hit harder than Black-owned businesses in Minneapolis and St. Paul.
It's been really impactful to see what a difference the show has made, and we're really proud of this 6th and final season. And once we decided to bring it home, that just felt like the perfect way to end such an impactful and beautiful show. So I recently made the decision to leave corporate America and pursue independent producing and filmmaking. And I'm really excited because as much as the Small Business Revolution has meant to me and to my team, and it was so fun to work on and so rewarding, I just have so many other things that I want to do. And so I'd encourage people when they're ever at that crossroads, even when you're working on something great at a great company, if you feel that itch around new ideas, there's just so much world out there and there's so much good that I want to do. And so for me, I'm just really excited about being able to bring that skill set to other brands. That's really my vision, is to make sure that more brands are doing work like this, long form, high quality content that not only does good things for their business, but changes hearts and minds.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Brett Stringer, and the name of my business is Carpe Diem with Jasmine. Yeah, so the beginning of my company is interesting. I will say that I actually started my business as a hobby business. You know, I was working in corporate America, and I always had a gift for gab, and I was doing some volunteer public speaking. I said, oh my goodness, I could get paid doing this. So I started my company while I was still working. But the company has evolved. I now work in my company full time as the founder and CEO. I was laid off, and so that's really what led to this version of the company. Originally, the company's name was JB Stringer, just my initials, and so I would say, you know, this is 2.0 Carpe Diem with Jasmine. And so it was the layoff that led to me deciding to do this full time. You know, I want to bring inspiration, I want to bring energy, I want to bring motivation, because I know we all need that. You know, if you're working a corporate job, if you're working for yourself, if you're working, you know, we all need to be inspired. We all need to be motivated. And I do that through 3 primary services: 1 as a professional speaker, 2 as a consultant, and then 3 as a lifestyle expert on air, on television, and then spokesperson with brands, and then I'll say micro influencer. So my award-winning book, and you know, it's been on some of the Amazon list, it's called Seize Your Life, How to Carpe Diem Every Day. And I describe it as a collection of practical guidance on how we can live a more mindful, authentic, and connected life. I wanted it to be a book that people would share.
Books that were impacting us, and I shared your book with the group.
So I hear a lot of noise about people supporting Black women, and I think, you know, in the afterfacts of George Floyd's murder, there were a lot of statements, and then there was a shift done in people supporting Black women, you know, BIPOC women. I'm not sure if the commitment is there today at the level it was in 2020, in the latter part of 2020, which is a little disheartening personally. I think, you know, and was it disingenuous, or is it because we're moving forward, or as some people like to say, you know, getting back to normal? But I don't believe in getting back to normal. I say that we're moving forward, that people have returned to the status quo. So Share the Mic Minnesota was really born out of my despair. You know, I say I felt like a flurry of feelings at the time of George Floyd's murder, and then we were also in, you know, the beginning now, we didn't know that then, the beginning of this global pandemic. I know, being a Black woman, you know, and especially we talk about intersectionality, that the Black experience is not monolithic. And for so many people, I am their Black friend, but I know that they needed to hear how other Black people were processing this. And so that's really what it was aimed at, to amplify the voices, the lived experiences of Black and brown women. Now, you know, it's actually evolved into some great partnerships and collaborations where we've worked with organizations and corporations. We're working with the Women's Foundation for the 2nd year in a row to help amplify the voices of those from marginalized communities. We have so much power when we tell our stories, because our stories are our greatest connector.
I'm Mickey Morissette. I'm the publisher and editor of Minnesota Women's Press. It's so interesting to me. I was very enmeshed in New York from a publishing work standpoint. I think a lot of it took me having a little a girl and now I have a son, to step back and recognize that I actually wanted to be part of community. I didn't want to just work all the time. So interestingly, my life got less stressful after I became a single mom. I had both kids on my own. I wrote a book called Choosing Single Motherhood. And I realized how important community connections were, and that wasn't something I really ever did in New York. So here, I now have this amazing network, thanks a lot to Minnesota Women's Press. I know all of these amazing women all over the place, and it's fantastic. Plus, I slowed down enough and got connected with families and other people with kids, which wouldn't have happened in New York. It wasn't until I started doing Choosing Single Motherhood and having these workshops around the country and having women together in a room and seeing the support that they offer just by being in the same sort of place of pain. A lot of them were really not wanting to be single moms, but they were at a point in their life where they had no other prospects. And there was one woman that came from Philadelphia. She came to my workshop in Boston because she didn't want to be recognized by anybody as somebody who realized it was too late for her to have children, and she really felt sad about that. She got a tremendous amount of support from these women that didn't know her at all, and it just really, for me, was astounding to recognize how nice people can be to each other. And then the thing that I have loved about the Minnesota Women's Press experience is that there's a an innate collaborative nature for so many women. So, but it can be, especially if you're a younger advocate or you're somebody who's just really starting to get involved with the issues, it's so frustrating how slow it can be to see progress made. And I've certainly talked to a lot of people who have been advocates around the same issues for decades. They do see progress, and they have seen progress over their lifetime, but it's debilitating, I think, and overwhelming unless you, again, make those connections with people. That's why we're starting this Changemakers Alliance, so that women around the whole state can be connected to other women that are trying to solve the same things, because that's as much a part of solving these issues as anything, because you need the self-care.
So I am Alexis Yaboa, and I am a consultant at AY Consulting. I had a lot of determination to graduate on time, and I made sure that I did, and I went straight from undergrad to grad school and took no time off. So my body literally shut down. And I think about my second time of burnout, and it was not too long ago, actually. It was right before the pandemic started. I woke up one morning, it was in January of 2020, and I was miserable. I was not sleeping. I was having some health issues. I was not performing well in my job. And I had my doctor actually tell me that it was critical and that I needed to make a change. And at that moment, I quit my job. I thought I could plan it out, right? I was planning on quitting March of 2020. And I quit in January. And lo and behold, the pandemic happened, and it was a whole world shutdown and everything. And that is actually one of the biggest blessings I've actually had for myself, was having the opportunity to take that time. It was probably around close to 2 years for me to get back up. I've been doing a lot of things. So I started writing for the Women's Press. I started doing my independent consulting. I got a brand new corporate job. And so I've been slowly gearing back up, but that was a huge sign of burnout. I think one of the things we can do to allow women to find their voice is not tamper us down. I was raised in a very traditional household, and I know a lot of other women are too. And even if you're not, society tells women to be quiet. I was a shy girl. I was a shy kid. And that is something that is praised. And so having a space where women and girls can actually express themselves and have a place where it is acceptable is one of the first steps, I think, to allowing more women to be able to write and to share their story.
I started a business that's predicated on wellness. First of all, this is in a time where wellness is under severe threat for the nation and for Black folks, and particularly for Black and brown folks in the Twin Cities. Render Free launched in October of 2020, which means that we were in the midst of a pandemic. We were grieving a public murder, a public lynching. We were processing and participating in unrest in our streets. Wellness was so far off at that point, right? Our wellness is still under threat today. My name is Ariel Grant, and I'm the founder and chief executive officer at Render Free. So I think that specifically for those that move about the world in Black and brown bodies, we tend to segment ourselves. We think about ourselves like the work version of us, and then we think about ourselves the home version of us, and then we think about ourselves as the friend or social version of us. But all of those things really influence our health and well-being, both physically, but also in our internal world, like mentally and emotionally. And so at Render Free, we really invite our community to consider their bodies, consider what our bodies are telling us so that we can be more attentive to the things that we need in order to be well. When I was working for an institution that didn't value me as a Black woman, take a deep breath, brace myself from the unknown, and step out into the day. And when I would return home each day, there would be this tension in me that really reflected this defensive stance that I was taking. For some Black women, that defensive stance is a hardness. And that is actually like a trauma response. We've learned to prepare for impact. And we're always in fight, flight, or freeze. And so we kind of have this like muscle tightening that happens both physically but also internally. For me, my armor is actually to be bubbly and charming and to make people laugh, right? Like Black folks there's like a stereotype that has some relevance that Black folks are funny. Like we know how to break that tension, and that is actually a survival mechanism. We stay stuck in that place of defensiveness. There's no ease. There's no inhalation and there's no, let me check my wounds. You build a business, a community resource, and the whole time, the strain, the work that you're doing is to hope that folks can see it the way that you see it. To try to find the words, the branding, the imagery, to communicate what you know in your heart. They feel it. These women tearfully spoke about their day-to-day lives and the way that they feel that they're constantly equated to their production and their performance, which we know dates back and has its foundation in slavery. Yeah. When Black women were sold on the auction block, the number that was presented alongside their bodies were not equated to their purpose in life, their worth, their ethos. It was all about how much they produced and performed for masters. It's sickening the way that that is still intertwined in the systems of today. And these members sat in this confessional, if you will, and they shared that Render Free has been a relief from that. And the way that that's changed the way that they see themselves and the way that that's changed how they move about in the world, even outside of our doors.
My name is Laverne McCartney Knighton, and I work for UNCF, United Negro College Fund. I am the Area Development Director. UNCF is a national organization. We've been around since 1944. We're in business to raise funds for scholarships for students of color to go to and through college. We're the oldest and largest education institution providing such services to students of color. I was privileged to be appointed to the Young Women's Initiative under former Governor Mark Dayton in 2018, 2019. And serving on that commission allowed us to be able to engage with young women from all across the state of Minnesota, from different walks of life, helping them sort out and be their own voices for what they needed in changing the disparities. Working with youth, working with young adults, and helping them fulfill their dreams and mentoring. I think those are the things that have driven me and given me the passion around supporting them and believing in them, because we need to have more adults really pouring into our young adults. You know, I'd say I'm a mother of many. I have a lot of children that are not children born to me, but you know, I'm auntie and TT, and I wear that proudly, because I know the investment you make, or that I make, in any young adult, young person, is going to take them to that next level. You know, in 2020, stepped up to run for state senator just because it was the right time. You know, I was called to do it, and it was for such a time as that. So that allowed me to be able to, you know, get back out there and really have a voice and run a campaign. Although I'm not a politician, I felt the need to heed to the call that George Floyd made to his mother. All mothers needed to step up, and I was one of 40 women who chose to run for elected office. We gotta let our voices be heard. We gotta show up. We gotta really be the change that we want to see. I mean, we witnessed so much since before George Floyd's murder, but his murder was the catalyst that made everything kind of come together. We all were able to see just what has been going on, kind of took the layers off of those things that hadn't been shown. It's been going on for a long time. Initially didn't think I was going to get the vaccine till much later, because I wanted to see all the bugs worked out. But then, you know, I lost my brother to COVID. You know, watching a loved one die and not be able to be with him. He was in Texas. Watched him, you know, he died alone. That was the hardest thing we ever had to endure. We describe Herb as just Herb. He was funny, he was joy, he was laughter, and he was, you know how every family has that one child that's different from everybody? Well, he was that one. You know, he didn't follow the direct line of, you know, life. He took it, he charted his own path. He was, you know, we all went to college. You know, he went but didn't want to go, and there was a rule that we were gonna all have to go to college. So he flunked out on purpose so that he could go to the military. So he went to the military, came out, and, you know, had a career for a brief time, but he was the one that had to work for himself. He became an entrepreneur himself. Just didn't do things according to the rules. And I think that's what we loved about him. He was his own person. His whole philosophy in life was, if you don't worry, because if you can do anything about it, if you can't do anything about it, why worry about it? Coming here was a culture shock. I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me, but I was working in an industry that I was very supported and nurtured in. What I've seen over the years is that there are more of us here. I mean, Minneapolis is a mecca for Fortune 500 companies. Young Laverne grew up in a small, segregated town, Doucette, Texas, born in the 50s, at the height of the civil rights movement. Had a visionary in our hometown, Mrs. Eloise Holmes Harris, who wanted to ensure that little black and brown girls and boys like me were able to be prepared and ready to go to school. And because it was segregation, we could not attend kindergarten with other white kids. So she started a daycare in her home, allowed about 25 of us, took care of us, educated us, got us really ready for school. And that was the catalyst, I think, for me really understanding who I was. I was very smart growing up, and Mrs. Eloise, as we called her, just really, really took a vested interest in making sure we were ready. The advice I always, for new transplants, young people who come to the Twin Cities who are recruited here, I always say you've got to get out and meet people, show up in places that, you know, you might be uncomfortable. networking is so critical because I believe that your network is your net worth. You know, when you can get that ingrained into how you meet people and be authentic about it, because people can see through that too if you're not real about it. But knowing who you need to connect with and reaching out and asking for that, you know, that informational or that data, so that can I chat with you? Can I, you know, ask you some questions about, you know, my career or where I might be able to go next? It's important, especially here in the Twin Cities, because, you know, our community is diverse, but there's still so few people of color here that, you know, we have to really connect with each other right away so that you can have that community. You need that village.
Yes, Leanne Rasajak, CEO of Women Venture. We help serve women, people of color, and all small businesses, entrepreneurs with access to capital, technical assistance, education, and training. The opportunity to become the CEO of Women Venture was in the back of my mind, right? Sitting on the board, understanding that we were seeking a new leader, and I thought, I can do this job. 60 to 70% of it, for sure, based on the experience that I bring. The rest of it is leaning on the incredible staff that's here, having the board support that I've had and continue to have, and then I'll learn it. You know, I'll learn it through the time, training, experience. And oftentimes women, we get in our own way to say, I've got to be 90%. I have to be able to check off all the boxes before I even apply for a job. And I knew that I didn't have to be 90%. I knew that in some cases you don't have to be 50%, but it is about taking the risk and raising your hand. When I think about opportunity for women, that's who I think about. And it's not just opportunity for women, it's opportunity for families too. And I want to ensure that people have access to the resources that they need. And those resources include a plan, a business plan, understanding, like taking your dream, putting it on paper and saying, you can not only pursue this, but you can monetize on this. I want every single woman and every single client coming out of Women Venture to have an opportunity to walk into a bank and get the funding that they need. But my message to you is that this is an urgent time. This is an urgent time to recognize what is happening from a racial equity perspective. And when you look at women in particular, women are leaving the workforce. Data supports that they are leaving in incredibly high numbers, and it is critical to your business. Critical to your business to keep women in the workforce, to support them as entrepreneurs, as business leaders, and they need you to be in their corner. I am the oldest of two children, you know, and as I mentioned, my parents, they immigrated here from Laos. They worked manufacturing jobs and shift work. And my mom and my dad, in their own way, right? My mom worked really hard for us, for our family, to financially provide, and double shifts all the time, right? And so the responsibility of caring for our home and caring for my brother was on me then, right? So grew up very quickly, and that's not, it's growing up in Eagan, Minnesota, culturally was different. When my parents were thinking about what to name me, what my name would be, my mom was looking through the newspaper, and she saw this young woman, and her name was Leanne. And Leanne was in high school, academic all-star, athlete, like all of these things, right? And so in my mom's mind, it was, this is what I want for my child. This is who I want her to be. It's a ton of pressure. And this is, you know, the spirit that I have from my family, where it's like, okay, I'm going to meet that and more, right? So that's where my name generated, and why I think I'm wired the way that I am, with these expectations from my family and the sacrifices that they made in their journey to provide for us. One person who was an advisor, right? So it was a volunteer organization, kind of like a student council. And he pulled me aside and he said to me, you need to be more assertive. And it wasn't in a, because right now, we think a lot about what are we telling women, how to be, what to do, smile more, do this, do that. His message was, you've got it. You've got the magic. Let it shine, right? So assert yourself in that confidence because you're on the right path already. That was someone in college. Aaron Mackey probably had no idea that he made that impact on me. As adults and as a community, we have a responsibility to help our youth, our young adults, the next gen. We need to provide a launch pad for them, right? And we need to rally around them. And now that we're getting to a point where we actually can see each other and then we're coming into whatever our new norm is, we need to support them. But continue to persist, continue on your path, be gentle with yourself. You've lost time, you've lost memories. And I would say, try to find joy, right? But then also look for the helpers.
My name is Anahita Champion, and I am a wearer of multiple hats. I am the squad captain at the Twin Cities Mom Squad, amongst other media work that I do. So we have coaching services for brand strategy. We do gatherings for events whenever you can, or workshops, and then we give back to the community through philanthropic effort. So I created a concierge service, Mobile Mommy, and so I ran that for 5 years. And because of the pandemic, you had to do a hard pivot, like everybody did. And instead of growing the business with contractors and a few other different ideas I had, I decided to just put a halt on it and kind of go back to my original roots, which is strategy and communications and media. So it was like a total 180 flip. But with Mobile Mommy, I had brand ambassadors, and I called them the Mom Squad. And I rebranded the business as the Twin Cities Mom Squad. So the name was there, it just carried forward in a different realm. And now the Twin Cities Mom Squad grows and gathers and gives together. As a little girl, little Anahita, I would always want to entertain. I liked being the center of attention. That carried forward in middle school, high school. That carried forward in undergrad. And that significantly carried forward in my 20s and now 30s. I would say I'm multi-passionate, and it's okay to be multi-passionate. I think that society has really coined stay in one lane, and it's very dated. And I like a lot of things, and I'm good at a lot of things. I may not always focus on every one of them at the same time, but really leaning into understanding myself and my personality and my temperament and my skills has made me feel more confident owning those passions and realizing that I don't have to do what everybody else does, whether that's 1 or 20 things. I love it all. When George Floyd was murdered and the entire uprising and beautiful movement that has come thereafter, nothing I've done has really changed. It's just been leveled up. It's been amplified. If you look back to all the things that I've been doing, if I look back to all the things I've been doing, constantly making sure the women and the people that are represented on my platform, on my web series, on my website, on the events that I have, there has always been a range of diversity. I've always tried to equally represent people. For showing up on my platform, I'm continuously sharing information I know when it comes to how to support the Black community, how to best represent other BIPOC, how to care for mental health, how to show up for youth, BIPOC youth, homeless youth. So in a COVID world, the virtual aspect has actually been a blessing. Personally, for me, I thrive off of people. I thrive off of the energy of my surroundings. I need that connection. Virtually, I think it's more convenient because my audience is generally more moms. They need flexibility. Having easier access virtually helps. I think flexibility-wise and with time. On a connection standpoint, it's been tricky though, because you feel the energy when you're in a room with someone. If I really look at the experiences I've had, and I look at the phrase leading by example. We're human, like we all make mistakes. And I think that leading by example lets that be okay, to show those vulnerabilities, to show those mistakes.
I'm Alex West Steinman, co-founder and partner of The Coven. The Coven is a radical space for change makers. We create physical communities for people to connect, places for people to co-work. We offer childcare on site in one of our locations, and we really focus on the experiences of women, non-binary, and trans folks, so we are open to all. Young Alex started her first job at 13. I worked in my dad's insurance office. He's always been an entrepreneur, even when he's had a corporate job. And I was answering front desk phone calls and loved it. I loved connecting with people. I loved helping solve problems. And as I grew up from 13, working in catering and food service and retail, I got my first internship as a senior in high school and worked with the Emma Bowen Foundation, which is a media organization that helps BIPOC students find jobs in media. And so I worked for Comcast for 4 summers through college and really got an opportunity to be in a professional setting, start networking, and really understand what is it like to have a career. And again, I loved it. I loved working. And I think when I left college and got into advertising, I stopped being myself because I saw what it took to get ahead in that industry. And so I, I kept wearing my hair really straight. I changed the way that I interacted with people. I was really quiet. And even though I was advancing kind of in titles and, slowly in salary, I wasn't necessarily seeing myself, continue to grow in that industry because there was nobody who looked like me. The movement to empower women is like so important, right? Women create life, women build empathetic, strong, powerful, revenue-generating businesses that are sustainable. They build things that are gonna last. They build legacy. They don't just build the next rocket ship that's gonna go to the moon and do nothing. They build things that matter, And I think women who want to get on board with that just need to be around other women who are on board with that. It takes seeing yourself and not just seeing you, but seeing yourself doing the thing you want to do. I think, the movement for Black Lives didn't start with George Floyd, but here in the Twin Cities, it certainly erupted. And when he was murdered and we all witnessed it, and the warfare on Black people is televised, you only have one option. I mean, I suppose you have multiple options. You could choose to ignore it, or you can act, and we chose action. And I think for me personally, this was in our backyard. This man was not too far away from my dad's age. I mean, it was so resonant with this person could have been anyone I know, and it just, in the same way that, when COVID hit and the brakes came on and we all kind of free fell forward and found our footing quickly, this did the same thing. The brakes came and we free fell, and the only thing to do was to act. And so we turned our Minneapolis location into a drop site and were able to collect donations, hundreds of thousands of dollars of donations, to make sure that they got to the right places. We operated in community, with community. We responded to community. It was something that people asked for, to use our space because it was empty because of COVID. And so to be able to activate and turn that quickly, I think just proved that like we have the ability to make change, you know, we have the ability to make a true impact, not just for entrepreneurs, not just for leaders, but for everyone. And our job is to merely listen to what community needs and respond to it. When George Floyd was murdered, there was so much like rapid response and emergency, you know, deployment. This incredible woman, Dr. Joy Lewis, based here in the Twin Cities, talks a lot about how, you know, when there's a fire, we deploy the Red Cross, but when a black man is killed and the city burns, we don't.
Shantara Hardy, Fearless Commerce. I am proud to be the co-founder along with Camille A. Thomas. Young Shantara was born and raised in Youngstown, Ohio. Youngstown is a place that grounded me in my grit and also my grace in knowing that despite what's happening outside, that building a community and building a career was possible. And so I'll let folks Google Youngstown to understand the history, but it is home for me. Yes, Fearless Commerce is a nationally recognized company that is focused on providing access to back office programming and visibility for Black women. We're on a mission to ensure that Black women are seen, that Black women are able to build thriving businesses from start all the way till they make the intentional choice to exit in their own way. So I'm so honored to have the opportunity to build Fearless Commerce with Camille A. Thomas, who is just a phenomenal woman.
We will continue to go to bat for Black women business owners. We will continue to use our voice for Black women business owners. We will continue to use our platforms. We will continue to use our experience and our expertise.
Women are building business at a very high rate overall. In particular, Black women, when we think about the rate of start for their businesses, they are the largest starters of business. Inclusive businesses are more innovative. They prosper at a larger rate. The business imperative and the understanding that success comes when you actually have folks at the table that come with different lived and learned experiences, you're able to respond. You're able to see the differences in the customers that you are trying to encourage to purchase your product or service. And so, yes, there's this moral imperative around should we ensure that we are living the desires of the democracy of this great United States of America? Yeah, we should. And the commitment to actually having diversity, equity, inclusion as a core tenet of your business strategy. If diversity, equity, inclusion is not a part of your KPIs, if you don't show up to diversity, equity, inclusion the way you show up to safety, that you have it ever present, that is something that you invest the resources in, that you ensure that everybody's committed to it. No business would ever say safety is an option. Well, being inclusive should not be an option. And that is something that we have to make sure, when we talked earlier about systemic shifts, that's a systemic shift that have to happen. And ensuring that we make sure that accountability related to diversity, equity, inclusion is there. That's where we are now. You know, it was very touching to see folks provide this national stage, in particular for Black business, for Fearless Commerce in particular, because visibility was why we started. But now the receipts are due. What did you buy? What did you leverage? What did you invest in? Because for Black businesses and for other businesses owned by people of color, this is livelihood. This is not numbers on a spreadsheet. This is not social media likes. This is livelihood when we are not invested in. this is generations of continuing poverty cycles when we are not invested in. And so it's not like a nice statement. It's not just you going to through your IDI training to see where your biases are. It's more than that. It is about ensuring that you are investing in the people and in the places that your business positions itself in and your business sells in. And for most businesses, where we are with technology having no walls, that's everywhere. So the responsibility to raise your hand, to do more and to do better is so important. And so that, for me, is serious. It's not a game. You know, I choose not to sit at these play tables where folks want to, you know, be woke. We've been woke. We actually tired. But the ability to trust that if I actually do go take a nap, that you're going to continue the work in a way that it is inclusive, that provides access to the table, it's pretty scary to most people that look like me. And so continuing to push to make sure that this is very serious is so important for us, especially the work that we do at Fearless Commerce to make sure that Black women are equipped, they are seen, and they have everything they need to thrive in this total economy, not just for Black people that I'm selling for, but in this total economy.
And so the fact that now I have built flexibility into my life and my career, and the fact that that's part of what I love so much about what I do is it does get to, for the most part, I command my schedule.
So what is that big vision that you hold for your life?
Being a good human being is the ultimate test.
You're combating the fear to do something, and then the outcome is bravery.
We have to stop wanting women to do the things that men have done.
Women, and it shouldn't be just women doing the lifting of like being able to explain why certain things are problematic.
Remember your whole self. Remember not to equate your worth to your production.
This generation is poor. We are poor compared to previous generations. They own homes, properties. We're not seeing that.
Especially in the last 5 to 10 years, there are more women business owners than I ever would have imagined here, and Black-owned businesses. And those women are part of networks that are really supporting the work that they do.
And it's time for you to show up.
National spotlight that Minnesota has gotten in the last couple of years, that people realize that we're here and they hear us saying, like, we're living in, you know, fear for our lives. We're living in joy in our communities. Like, we hold multiple truths, and that we are complex people, and that we aren't a monolith, and that this state is more than what you know.
Women rule, and they should be provided access to the opportunity to make the rules. And no matter if they're on the block organizing to make a difference or in the boardroom to move strategy, they should have access to whatever chair they want to bring into the room, and if they so choose, access to the supplies to build the table that they want to sit at in order to make those rules. So let's let women rule.